as the Assistant Secretary just a moment ago, also that global or cooperation amongst the democracies of the world is working, but also that the EU is taking serious. And that's also why Charles Michel, the President of the European Council, arrived as well with a vaccine pledge to the summit this morning, said, look, the EU will deliver 350 million vaccines to the world. There are other important issues which have to be discussed, which is, for example, the recovery, public finances. There is a very important issue, which is the Green Deal, the carbon issue. And Charles Michel also said in an interview this morning, the US needs to price carbon. So that's a very difficult issue to discuss. But there are also other international issues which have to be discussed, which are on the agenda, which is China. I think extremely important to, let's say, that there is a common line towards China from the G7. And there is also Russia in the preparation of the important Putin meeting on Wednesday. Sorry, I think on Russia they are aligned. It's probably on China that we are not so aligned. But even on China, I think we're getting closer to that. If you see certainly over the last year, actions by national parliaments, let's say clearer pronouncements against violations of human rights in China, etc. Also on the situation in Hong Kong, for example, that is clear. But I mean, on Russia, I think we have a common line. And certainly, if you see the reaction which we've seen in Europe on what's happening in Belarus, and also the support from Putin to what Lukashenko is doing, let's say to the horrible conditions which all these people are getting, which have some opposition to what the regime is doing. I mean, I think there's a strong consensus in Europe that we need to do something about this. The problem is just that we feel, mightless, let's say, against this regime. And that's why, Europe is extremely happy, let's say, that we have Biden in the White House and that there is strong cooperation. And I think that Biden has even delivered more than we expected in the beginning. Take, for example, about reinstating the troops which Trump wanted to get out of Germany. That's one of the first things which Biden said, which comforts Europe that there is a security support from the United States. However, Europe should be aware, let's say, that it needs to do its part of the game as well on the side of, for example, the troops. And that issue which you mentioned in the beginning about Trump always insisting on this trade surplus which Europe has, and this trade surplus, by the way, has been increasing all the time during the Trump years and continues to increase. It's about 150 billion now for goods. This is also something on which Europe should be aware that it needs to do something and probably at certain occasions unilaterally reduce tariffs which it has on certain goods which are being imported from the United States. They were certainly on the green agenda, which was just discussed, where Europe is already very well advanced, probably the most advanced in the Western world, and where we have the COP26 meeting, let's say, of all the members at United Nations level, let's say, working on climate change. I think with the G7, they will want to make concrete steps to make sure that at the meeting later this year in Glasgow, let's say that we can come to tangible results. And there are many things, let's say, on that level which have to be tackled. There's just expanding, let's say, who is covered by the whole emissions trading scheme, let's say, and a reduction of emissions. But it's also introducing, as I said a moment ago, a carbon price in more jurisdictions. Europe is the only jurisdiction in the world which has an emissions trading system which is working at the moment. And the emissions costs have increased recently, showing that the system works. But we need to expand this. And there is one very difficult thing related to that. If the others do not have a carbon price, will we have what we call a carbon border adjustment mechanism to tackle this? So that could be a big hindrance to international trade if we don't have an agreement to this. If Europe tries to, from its side, with these systems, tackle climate change, and the others don't do it, then we have a big friction for international trade. So that can be worked on. There are also, as I said, other elements. China is also making its steps on the climate change agenda, but this will have to be combined, for example, with seeing positions from that on China, and then probably from the G7, seeing more lenient positions on issues related to human rights.